Just to give a bit of a heads up on it, Greens must really review crisis management, says Dunedinite Gareth Hughes. He's living in the middle of the Dunedin Harbour at the moment, looking after a dock property. Former Green MP says party would need to really review how they're approaching crises as its vetting process is scrutinised. Now, we know what the situation is. We've got Green MP Darlene Tan, whose husband's company has been accused of, my word, abusing, taking advantage of migrant workers, paying cash, which is obviously illegal with someone who doesn't have a work. And they're talking about she had nothing to do with it, she had no input to it, etc., etc., etc. The only reason I've got this video is up because, Clint, what I want to ask you is, as a strategist who's been on the ninth floor, what does the party do for this? Because we don't pull punches here. We don't play favourites. If it's called a dirty stink bomb, we call it a dirty stink bomb. And this is shit house for the Greens, and it's a bad look. I just want to play you the timeline so everybody's aware of the situation. I think this might have been from Saturday's news.
On February 1st, Darlene Tanner told the party co-leaders of a formal complaint against her husband's business. A week later, a second complaint from another worker. This time it mentioned the MP. She was stood aside from her small business portfolio. And it was only yesterday, following media inquiries, she was suspended.
So there you go. That's all I really need to show, because everyone's been on top of this. So there was about give or take a 2-week period that the party knew between them finding out about some accusations with a tacit connection alleged to accusations including to a step down. I'd really be keen to, I don't know if you've ever been in a kind of meeting where this sort of thing comes up, like a serious scandal, but you did work as a strategist in the Jacinda Ardern government. Give us your perspective from that side of it, because this is a terrible look. I mean, we've just had Gaura's Garhaman, pled guilty to shoplifting. We've now got this. I want to know what they should do about it, because I also want to know, I don't think this will affect the party faithful. I think they'll be solid, but for the Greens to be the next left-wing party, which is their ambition, right? It's absolutely their ambition. We had Chloe on last week telling us that. How do they go through these kinds of things, traverse through these sorts of things, and grow their base is what I'm thinking as well.
Yeah. I mean, this is when these terrible things do happen for any party. There's certainly questions about the background checking that the Greens have been doing. I think Gareth raised there the quality of that, but events happen. MPs misbehave, dark secrets from the past come out, and it's the test of leadership is what you do when that happens. And I think the problem for the Greens is that they knew enough that they stood it down from her portfolios, but didn't tell anyone, which is really weird because
so that was in the middle. So let's say it was about the end of week 1, they stood her aside. End of week 2, they withdrew her. So that was about the time frame.
Yeah, and I think you could think Barbara Kuriga, right? Like her husband and son were being prosecuted over maltreatment of animals on their farm.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And she was stood down from the agricultural portfolio as a result. And you can see there's a conflict there. And it was alleged that she'd been writing to officials and pressuring them over this case. So it was right that she was stood down. And similar logic that Darlene Tanner had a portfolio that overlapped with the substance of their allegation, and then especially when she was named personally, it was right to stand it down. But there was no reason not to make it public then, and that's when it starts to look bad. You in these crises, you want to get all the information that you can, and there'll be sometimes privacy limitations, legal privacy limitations. You want to get all the information you can out to the public as soon as possible, so that you don't have a rolling maw of stories and revelations. Yeah. And sometimes that happens because you've trusted an MP. They've told you, no, this is all that's there. And then it does turn out there's more. So you have to be pretty sure of yourself and try and get all the information you can. But this is weirdly like the Gorries thing, in that they tried to sort of keep it under the carpet. It mystifies me that they took that approach.
What
I
about
think,
when it's an accusation? Like, it's a serious accusation, but it's an accusation.
Yeah.
What do you do when, I mean, like, we all know how keen I should play it, shouldn't I? How keen Mr. Luxon is to make sure that nobody ever has even an appearance of a conflict of interest. But what do you do in a setting like that when there is an accusation, but, you know, you have to, should we do Mr. Luxon? Let's do Mr. Luxon. You have to let kind of, I don't know, the justice system take its course?
Well, for the very reason that it actually leads to perceptions of bias, rightly or wrongly. I just say to you, that's the perception. Whether that's real or not doesn't really matter.
Now, that perception doesn't come into account when you're giving money back to landlords and you own 5 rental properties. But, what do you do when you can't really make a decision because there's allegations? The person says, I'm innocent. What happens then?
Yeah, and it's a tough one, right? But when something is in a judicial process or semi-judicial process, and it relates to them and to their portfolio, I think the right thing is to stand them down from any related portfolios they have. You don't necessarily have to. You don't have to suspend them from a caucus or even take all their portfolios away from them, but you do have to be seen to say, look, given what's happening in your personal life right now, it's not appropriate for you to be speaking on behalf of the party on this issue because it's too close to where these allegations sit.
Right.
And I go back to the Barbakuraga. Andrew Little stood down Carmel Cepoloni as social development spokesperson when her mum was up on charges over some welfare fraud. That cases like this do happen, and it doesn't necessarily mean that but there's a guilt. But it's just appropriate just to stand aside.